All right. Well, my pen. Sorry, let me grab a pen.
Okay. I love this old picture you took out.
You know, I pulled that off of Instagram, and
I remember the moment when we took this photo.
yeah.
We were in, I'm blanking on what part of Colorado.
Canyon City.
Canyon City, Colorado.
How is that place?
It was really cool. We went there to shoot a proof of concept for a feature. What year was that? 2019, I think?
Yeah.
And we went there because they had this old jail. It's kind of like what y'all were just talking about, buying an old school or something. There was an old prison that felt right for 1982. We were doing a historic kind of period piece, like an accurate crime drama sort of proof of concept that was really cool, but we had to travel out there for this specific location, and then we were shooting driving scenes this day and drone footage and stuff. It was like a cop chase scene in the 80s. It was super cool, really fun, like to be in the desert when the sun is setting and have that kind of like end to the day, you know.
I kind of miss the desert. So we used to live in Arizona. We actually almost retired out there.
What part?
Sierra Vista, like in the southern part, right by the Mexico border.
Yeah.
But it was gorgeous, man. It was riding weather all year round, except for monsoon season. But there's something magical about the desert that you don't really even realize, or especially here in the States, the Southwest. I've never been to Colorado though, so.
Erika lived out there.
Yeah, my sister still lives in Denver, and I lived there for about a year, and I visited all the time. I was like having a moment journaling actually yesterday, and I was like, I miss Colorado, like the Southwest, because you're really close. It's like easy to get to LA, it's easy to get to Utah, it's easy to get to New Mexico, and easy to get to Arizona, which are like some of my favorite states. So, but there's something like really magical about the desert and like the Rocky Mountains and you know all of that is like so. I don't know. I was like, it's so cool out there, and like it's like arid, which I love, and I love the like vast expanse of the desert. It's really just so different from growing up in North Carolina, where you're just like constantly in a grove of trees all the time.
Yes. You wrote it in Imogene. It's like part of my character's arc, and like where she's trying to get to is like going to Arizona, because there's that like wide open space and that kind of majestic thing you don't get being in rural eastern North Carolina. So I think there's like a wanderlusty thing that's universal that people just feel drawn out there, you know, and it comes from like our own personal experience. I feel like we went there. Remember when we turned 30, we were like doing our Saturn returning trip, and we went to Sedona, and it was like this manifesting moment. Yeah.
Did you guys go to all the vortices out there in Sedona?
Yep, we did. We went to a place called Buddha Beach, and we did Cathedral Rock hike and had like a sunrise out there. And you know, a lot of like, we're really spiritual people when it comes to like tapping in, you know, to the universe and to your kind of big visions, I guess, for all of us. It's like as indie filmmakers and what we're trying to do in eastern North Carolina, but we do a lot of like just believing it's going to come to you, and you have to go in places where you're inspired to do that sometimes. And growing up here, I don't know if it's the pine trees that really inspire me. I like making movies about them, but you gotta like get out there to, you know, feel tapped in.
I think that's something like, especially when you're doing creative work, right? Because it's, you know, as a creator of really anything, it doesn't have to be art, but you're pulling something from the ether and manifesting that into reality. Like you're giving birth to something that didn't previously exist in that form. And so I think tapping into these things that are invisible, it's important, because it's really just connecting to that same space where creation comes from. And I don't know, that's a fascinating thing that we talk about all the time. And me and Jacqueline are actually reading this book by Walter Russell that like breaks down all this old science of things, and it's.
I love that. We kind of talk about the collective consciousness, and I was reading this book called Women Who Run with the Wolves, and it's a professor, and she talks about this old expression of the river beneath the rivers, which is that sort of subconscious mind state, and it makes me, I think when you're writing, especially, or you're in a creation process, you're in a flow state that takes you into kind of a meditative state in the same way that you would if you were doing anything else that kind of opens up your mind and, you know, unblocks you. Because there'll be times I'm writing or even editing and I think that 30 minutes has gone by and I look up and it's been 2 hours. I'm like, where was I just now? So you're thinking, if someone else is in that same space and we're all tapping in, it makes sense when these strange synchronicities occur when you're watching movies and you're like, how did both these movies come out at the same time or within the same time? Or how did these ideas that seem from two people that are not related somehow cross-pollinate each other? And I feel like it has something to do with that.
It's got to, man.
Yeah.
There's so much evidence out there that supports it. And, you know, I always think about things like, well, even with the studio, you know, stuff like this is happening. Like, this is an expression of the universe and it's trying to express itself through us. So even if we decide not to do this or take this step or whatever, that information is still out there and it's going to get to somebody who's eventually going to act on it and bring it into this form of reality.
So why not you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, why not right now? It's, yeah.
Even if you don't feel prepared, like, the universe is still trying to express something through you. So you either run with it or somebody else is going to. And not that that's right or wrong. It's just nature.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that you bring up like all these similar things that seem to pop up almost at the same time. It's like, sometimes I think about life like a video game. It's like everything leveled up, so now these things are accessible to people where they weren't before.
Or you feel open, like you've opened yourself to this kind of portal of being available for the blessings or like the opportunity, and because you've spoken it out or just believed it or even visualized it, it's going to come to you that much sooner. It's like the invisible thread connecting all of us. I feel that. It's really cool to talk to somebody else who's like, he gets it.
Yeah.
Like, yes.
Yeah,
we talk about this stuff all the time.
Oh, dude, we are deep into that stuff, like quantum entanglement, like realizing that, I mean, you guys have probably seen this where particles are just kind of free floating until they're observed, even mentally, and then they coalesce into form. And, you know, and that's been scientifically proven or observed. And, you know, I guess when you talk about manifesting and taking something, you know, from there into here, and how they say visualize that and focus on it, what you're doing is you're coalescing those particles and it reaches a critical mass to where like, well, now it's got to come into reality. So I'm not thinking about this shit all the time.
I don't even know
that.
the science behind it, so hearing that it's actually proven just gives me that much more faith. I'm just like a blind faith magic woo-woo girl, so that's so awesome that there's reality behind everything that has, it feels like it's like the blessings we've received because we just believe in them, you know?
Yeah.
Have you guys read Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act? Oh, dude.
That sounds really good.
It is so good. Yeah. Maybe we'll send you all a copy.
Yeah, that'll be awesome.
It's amazing. I think it'll be right up your all's alley. But I guess in way of introductions.
What are we going to talk about?
Film,
business, music,
art,
Technology.
Podcasting from Jacksonville, North Carolina, it's Backstage at TENCROW Studios.
This is going to
Kristi-
be a heady podcast.
Kristi Ray and Erika Arleee, thank you guys for coming. We're here with the Honeyheads here at TENCROW Studios, so appreciate y'all making the drive up. What's going on? Like, what's Honeyheads into these days?
Oh, so many things. I feel like earlier we were in your space talking about all the hats that we wear. So I think about that when people are like, how's it going in Honeyhead land? I'm like,
Where do you
where
begin?
do I start? Yeah.
Y'all feel like that too?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's big.
We're in like a big learning season, or we have been, because we're seeing our very first feature film out the door into distribution right now. It's going to be available on streaming at the end of this month on June 27th. And we're also in the process of packaging our next feature. So we're in these interesting seasons with both of these projects where we're not actively in production or post-production, but we're in this moment of kind of seeing them through in different ways. One from a Genesis standpoint and one from wrapping it up and seeing it out the door. Yeah.
Are there lessons that you learned from Imogene that now you're able to immediately apply to the feature that you're working on now?
100%. The first thing that comes to mind, and you probably will think of the same thing, is like the packaging strategy, right? We kind of mentioned this to you earlier, but A Song for Imogene was shot here in Eastern North Carolina. It was financed here in Eastern North Carolina. Micro budget, $200,000 feature.
Yeah.
Looks really beautiful. Hired amazing collaborators who also had their debut feature. It was a really cool experience. We're able to utilize all those local resources and relationships we've been building for the last 10 years of being a production company, and Eric and I investing in the community. All that boomerang energy came back to help us because it was so collective and like homegrown. It's a lot of unknown actors, you know, first time director, these kind of things that aren't necessarily marketable for the traditional industry, so to speak, or for those traditional investor types to get involved. But that wasn't the strategy in the first feature. We really wanted to make a movie we were proud of, to showcase our talent and to create what we like to call the calling card film that could go prove our worth in bigger markets or with bigger investors who want to come to the table to help us produce the next feature, which is a much higher concept film. Do you want to tell them a little bit about why Host Country is different and how the strategy behind it had to shift from Imogene?
Well, we knew coming into our second feature that we wanted to make something that was a little more commercial, I guess, but still felt grounded, female-driven, and all the other elements that people love about Imogene. And as a writer, I felt like A Song for Imogene was the story I really needed to get off my chest. And then coming back to write Host Country, which is the next feature, I thought I really want to write a movie that I would want to go see in a theater, like a big, you know, like a blockbuster type of film.
Yeah.
And I love action. I love thrillers. I love, you know, things that lean a little more drama, but still have or a little more genre, but still have dramatic elements to them and character-driven elements to them. So that's really what this film became. And it's a really cool dystopian, post-apocalyptic action thriller that's female-led. It's a mother-daughter story. And there's a lot of world building that I got to do. And so it just necessitates a larger budget. It's just larger scale. We're building a whole world from basically what was post-apocalyptic America. We're kind of examining what might have happened or what could happen in the aftermath of that, which is something you see Hollywood do a lot, and you see people explore that a fair amount. But I really wanted to ground it in realism. So there's no zombies or fungus that are going to take you over. You know what I mean? I was like, I kind of just want to explore a sense of realism about this and focus on how I feel like, well, now about to be a mom, you know, how I might react to that from a more feminine perspective, I guess, less of like, as much as I love like Mad Max and things like that, less of like Arlee's kind of with her like cool arm, you know what I mean? Like being a badass, is a little bit more of a grounded story about human relationships and human dynamics and power dynamics in that world. So that's really what it centers around, but also with a lot of fun action in it too.
And with all that action comes money, right? And financing. Yeah. And so we come back to the drawing board after we had a successful, you know, first film, and we're thinking, how do we do this different? How do we deploy the strategies that the traditional industry puts in place to kind of get those pre-sales? Like, what does that look like? How do you attach talent that will move the needle for distributors, and then create a financial plan on the front end instead of the back end. Know your exit plan as filmmakers before you even step onto production. Where is this movie going to end up? What platforms are you aiming for? You know, get all of those financials together. It's less of a risk, right? You're mitigating investors' risk, because when you're asking for multiple millions of dollars, people want to see the worst case scenario spelled out, and they want to be able to bank on your worst case projections, not your necessarily like this is the best thing that could happen, right? All of that needs to be based in reality. And so through the festival circuit with A Song for Imogene, we met our two producers who are attached to the project. One's based in Atlanta and one's based in Los Angeles. And I remember the moment meeting both of them and them seeing our film, our first feature, and saying, wow, you did this for $200,000. What else do you have? And having that back pocket elevator pitch, having the script, you know, on spec, written and everything ready to go before the world premiere. That was a strategy. We definitely planned on that.
Nice,
and it came back in a really big way. It took a while to build those relationships, but it's kind of the hook we had in the room to get the meeting later, right?
Yeah.
So those people have been on a journey with us since 2023. And we're just now closing in on our first round of investment, where we'll be going out to talent with offers for a couple roles in the film, a supporting female lead character and a smaller male, really fun kind of, how would you describe him? He's
kind
not
of a disillusioned member of the group that has taken power in the recovering United States, but was a leader in this group, and he's become disillusioned with the mission.
he's like a foil character,
Yeah.
right? For the main antagonist in a way. And so we're looking to cast two bankable names to support the ensemble Southeastern based cast. And Erika will write and direct, and I'll play the lead character in the film and be able to produce the movie as well under Honeyhead, but utilize some of those tools to make sure that the return makes sense financially for people. And once you realize like all the chess pieces that kind of have to line up and how the strategy works, it becomes less opaque. You're like, oh, this is a strategy that almost every movie they go and they attach talent, and then they do pre-sales, and then those pre-sales are brought to the investors, and the investors bring the money to the table based on a financial plan. It's not just like, here's my deck and my great idea. Why don't you invest in what I have going on? There's like a very tried and true strategy. So something we learned from Imogene is that while that's not really accessible for everybody in their first feature, if you can make a really solid calling card film, the right people are going to get on your team who have the right kind of clout and understand the strategy to help build out, you know, your financial plan for the next project, so you can continue to scale and scope your ideas. But don't try to make the dystopian action thriller in your first film, because it might not look that great, right? Like on a $200,000 budget.
Or you might raise a lot of money to make it based on the genre, and then you don't have talent attached to sell it on the back end, so you end up in this scary moment where you have the film completed, you're trying to get it sold and distributed, and no one's picking it up. They're like, who's in it? And you're like, a bunch of really, really good unknown actors. And they're like, not needle movers for me, which that was part of why we knew we wanted to make a small film our first go around, is because we were really committed to our local cast, and our local crew, and we really wanted to make something that felt very authentic to the place. And we made the creative decision not to pursue name talent for the first film, because we wanted something that felt like a study in realism in the Southeast, and we wanted it to feel almost voyeuristic for the audience, and sometimes throwing a famous actor in there as like a supporting or minor character just to try to get your film sold or get it into certain festivals. We were afraid it would take the audience out of the film.
Well, that makes sense. It's made by people that live in that area. That's
And $200,000 is a manageable amount of money to think about raising in your kind of, your network, or like your 6 degrees of separation from who do you know. $6 million is like a whole different, it's a whole different ball game,
Once you add that zero, it changes. It's really interesting hearing you guys talk about this, because there's definitely like a business side to filmmaking that I feel like doesn't really get talked about enough, or maybe it's just not, it's not the interesting stuff, you know, but it's the necessary stuff.
Yeah.
Like if you're interested in drawing, well, it's hard to draw if you don't have the paper and the pencil, and but so you need to get those things. Kind of like in film, you have to have these things if you want your art to actually get to where.
Yeah, it's like going to school to learn how the paper was made. And do you really care as the artist, like how the tree gets cut down and milled, and then
Right.
they're going to dye it, and then there's all these pieces that come together to create this notebook. And having that holistic understanding, it strengthens your pitch. It helps people feel confident in you, that they want to invest in your team. But it's really hard to be good at everything. We also were talking about this earlier. You know, if you're a great writer, director, cinematographer, producer, and actor, it's hard to be like also the financial wizard. But it's important to at least have a general understanding and to feel like you can sit in on meetings and present the film and talk about the film like a business, because it really is like a startup. We say that all the time. It's like you're selling your startup once the movie is like ready for distribution.
Oh, absolutely. And an investment for people, like, you know, and an exit strategy is really important for investors. Like, I know we've done our fair share of investing, and, you know, that's something you always think about, like, because you're not putting in money into something. I mean, some people do, but for the most part, people don't put money into something not wanting to get more money back or something of equal value. So yeah, I think it's a really important aspect of filmmaking that doesn't really seem to get highlighted a ton. But I think that's changing now, as you see more and more independent filmmakers starting to take the torch from the major studios, and you know, with all the streaming platforms now that are looking for content, like I think it's becoming more and more accessible to a lot broader range of folks. So we're going to have different perspectives, different voices, and hopefully more interesting stuff coming out.
Yeah. And not to be a pessimist about that, but I'll just be transparent that when we sold A Song for Imogene to our distributor, and it's going to be out on Amazon Prime, we didn't get like a big MG. We didn't get a minimum guarantee, or like even made back the production budget, which was pretty low, right, for a film. That was our hope when we started this process, but it's not how it played out, because we didn't have name talent, and it was, you know, not one of the types of genres that's in demand in the verticals that like all these mandates from the studios, right? It's like a slow burn, character driven, grounded indie drama, and it has a place in the world, and people, there is an audience for it. But the slow crawl of like recouping the financing it took to just make the film and break even, it begins on June 27th. And, you know, it's like probably going to be many years down the road before that happens. At least there's a place for it to live and for people to see it outside of our network. So that's a huge win.
Yeah.
But the faster and like the more thoroughly indie filmmakers can understand the business and just start to create with those practices in mind, it's going to create more sustainability in places like North Carolina, where it isn't really a business. We're kind of like this state where there's a lot of below the line people. We're part of the infrastructure, but we're trying to build up the above the line base in North Carolina and make sure that we're putting our state on the map of places where the ideas are coming from and the investment is coming from, and the writers and directors and producers live here, and actors from this region can lead a film and sell a film. And it takes some time to create that reality, but it's like part of our vision. And I know y'all are tapped into that too. And I think everything that we're all doing collectively is working towards the same goal at the same time. So business is part of it. It's not the fun part, but it's like the necessary bit
That's what keeps the
that
wheel
makes
turning.
production happen.
To establish trust in investors, you know, you have to establish trust in people and prove that you can make fully in-house in-state projects that have really good IP and they have good leadership. And in addition to having all of the amazing resources we have with vendors and crew and all of that. So it just takes, like Kristi said, a little bit of time to prove that model, but I feel like it's starting to happen.
Yeah, we feel it ourselves. Like, you know, there's a tipping point that we're approaching where, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but outside of just calling it a feeling, but you feel this pressure or momentum that's building, and, you know, we're getting to a point where it's gonna just blow up, and looking forward to that. Blow up in a good way.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, because I know on Imogene, several places I've heard you mention that a lot of the crew and the cast that you guys had on that, it was their first time operating in that particular role. How did you determine who you thought might be a good fit for that role based on their experience? Like, I guess what I'm asking is, how do you decide who would be a good fit to be in that role, even though they don't have experience, but are still capable and have the potential to see it through, without really impacting the project?
I'm really
negatively?
curious what Erica's gonna say. I have like my go-to. I know it's you speak first because I want to hear what you're gonna say.
I think that it's also a feeling, and I'm a big proponent of people, even if they've never fulfilled a certain role, there's other ways that they prove that they're capable of that. And I felt that way before I ever wrote and directed a feature. I felt like I was banging on the door. I was like, I'm ready. I've written and directed and edited short films for years. And I remember coming into the process of developing Imogene and trying to finance it, and people said, well, you're a first-time writer-director. And I was like, what? Oh, because I haven't done a feature. And I was like, how frustrating.
Yeah.
So why would we hold up that? Why would we close the door and create a gate for people like having the same experience as us, or having that experience I was having, which was a level of frustration because I knew I was capable, but in the eyes of the industry being considered first time. So when it came to hiring department heads in our crew, I was like, I'm not going to put up that barrier to entry that I'm experiencing for those people. And I think about all the folks who were so passionate about coming on this project, like our cinematographer, Nick, and he saw the short film we made of this, which was not a proof of concept for the feature. It was a short film I wrote back in 2015 for Kristi and I to play sisters opposite each other, and for us to just have an acting exercise and play women we wish we got to audition for as actors. And we let it have a little micro festival run, and it got great feedback. It was very well received by the audience, even though it was very much us building the plane while flying, learning while doing, as far as the technical aspect of making the short film. And Nick was one of the people who saw it, and he said, if you ever make this a feature, I wanna shoot it. And we were like, that's exciting,
That's
that
awesome.
someone, and he has a great eye. We have similar eyes. I'm also a cinematographer, so it was important to find someone who appreciated the fall of natural light and understood how to shape that the same way that, in a similar way that I wanted to see the film come to life. And our creative collaboration was just really natural. So I was like, I don't care if you haven't DP'd a feature yet. I know that's a goal that you have for your career, so why not let this be a film that opens the doors for all of those people, that want that opportunity. And Nick's an amazing cinematographer, gaffer, photographer, so it was very clear he was capable of doing that and leading a team in that capacity. He just not had his shot yet.
That came into play, I feel like, with every single department head, from our costume designer to, our composer, our editor, our gaffer. It was really a feeling. That was my word I was going to say. It's totally a gut check. It's my favorite part about producing is like the chemistry of creating a crew and thinking about that top-down leadership and how does the positive vibe at the top trickle down and create a safe environment for everyone. The absence of ego was just a huge part of this movie's success because we didn't come into it with a big ego, it being our first feature, totally open, right? Not totally open to everyone's idea, but to learning and collaborating and not having a set way that we felt it needed to be industry standard, this, that. We had to have this lighting package, this camera package, like grip and electric, can't share a truck, Sprinter van, this. Like we didn't need all the bells and whistles because we were just stoked to make the movie, do it however we could, make it look really great, and hiring people who were also that excited about it, all these new ideas of how do we get by with little? We don't have the traditional tools. Well, I haven't led a set with the traditional tools, so I've got ways I'm thinking outside the box. I'm going to be able to bring my kind of scrappy indie resourcefulness to the table. All of our department heads felt that way. And we also brought a lot of interns to the table who just never even been on a set. That was kind of the rest of the crew, the PA Nation,
that's
where
awesome.
our 7 interns from UNCW and Yale and UNCSA and all these amazing universities, and they had the summer of their lives, and they got to experience with a lot of responsibility what it was like to work on, you know, a manageable size set where they weren't afraid of getting fired or yelled at, but learn from people who are also learning, and acting and creating with like kindness and with this just like a humbling energy. I feel like the movie had a lot of that.
And when you're, to be totally honest, we've already talked about the budget for the film, so it's not like we could pay people their full rates. We paid everyone the same across the board. And so you have to think also as an indie producer, what is the emotional value that I'm providing people, and what's, you know, the career value that I'm adding if I'm not able to pay someone their full rate. So giving someone an opportunity to add a huge, like a fully mounted feature film to their resume in a position that they haven't been able to level up to yet is part of that give and take, that emotional give and take. And I would also say you have to be careful as an indie filmmaker when you don't have like the big fancy day rates to pay, you know, the celebrity DP or the really experienced editor or something like that, because your project might get deprioritized by those people if they don't have an emotional buy-in to what you're doing, because you're not paying their usual rate. So I think about that too, is there's could be a trade-off there between bringing someone in who just sees it as a gig and, you know, their kind of philanthropic effort for the year, you know what I mean?
Right,
and then
yeah.
they're not necessarily emotionally invested in it, or you get kind of like pushed off or you're having to work around their schedule, you know, because they're not prioritizing your project. I feel like everyone who was on this project loved the concept. They wanted to work with Honeyhead, and they were really, really passionate and prioritized it. And that also comes through on camera. You can tell that people cared and took time and care into setting up every single frame. And it has made a difference with how it's received at festivals and critic reviews and how the audiences feel watching it. We always get so many comments on the aesthetic of the film and the performances, and like the way the edit flows and the music and all of that are things people feel are so cohesive. I'm like, that's because our crew cared and they were having a good time, you know, making the film, and their hearts were in it. I think that's what you see on screen.
Yeah. And I think, you know, just having seen everything that's been out there about A Song for Imogene, it almost seems like that's part of the magic of that film. Like, it extends outside of the film itself, because it's not just the story that you're telling on screen. Like, the bigger story is everything that's happening off screen, and how, I mean, this required a lot of trust from you guys that you placed into these people, especially for your first feature. You know, that's a tremendous amount of trust to put into folks that, you know, are really just kind of taking a chance on them, and which is awesome. And seeing that energy pour back into it to what you were able to create is, I mean,
They're taking a chance on us too,
Yeah.
you know, I guess in a way, you know, they're coming under the wing of us doing this for the first time for many weeks in a row. I
Yeah.
mean, that's a different, you know, coming from short film territory into feature film territory and running those weeks and making sure that you're honoring, we were a non-union production, so making sure you're honoring people's time and not overworking them, because there aren't the confines of the union, so you still want to make sure that you're running your set appropriately, you know, in a way. So people also are taking a chance on us and trusting us that we're gonna not overwork them, and we're gonna feed them well, and we're gonna make sure that we're not running over 12-hour days and all of that. So there's a give and take of the trust there. We're like, you're entrusting us with your well-being, and we're entrusting you with our creative baby. You know?
I think it's so cool that you can feel that, like the secondary story, because I feel that so strongly in my heart. And everything you just said, I think comes with the territory of being female filmmakers. I'm listening to Erika talk and I'm like, that's that maternal energy we just bring to set. And that's what makes it feel like a honey head set. It's kind of this like term people will throw around. Oh, this feels like a honey head set. It's like, oh, the producers care about me. That's a honey head set. I'm well, well accommodated emotionally. There's space for my mental health on set. That's a honey head set.
That's
I'm really
amazing.
proud to have those kind of that trust and those feelings like represent our brand. And that's something we built for 10 years before we made this movie too. And it followed us through the film. And I love that people outside of the immediate community of making that can like witness that, because this really is a moment with us moving into distribution where we get to just celebrate all of that.
Yeah.
And it was successful. And the movie looks like it was made for $1 million and not $200,000. And that came from vendor deals and the community coming back to help us. But it all comes from a place of like just the good vibes that you put out there and that kind of boomerang energy. And I also just want to mention the cast. There's like, I don't know, 10 out of 12 of the main actors probably, maybe those numbers aren't right. A lot of people's like first or second time on set at all. Maybe some people have never even been on set before they worked on this film. But the movie is such a study in realism that was really important, not to have like a child actor that just like was robotic and commercial.
Yeah, right.
So he's just the kid. He just is the guy. And that comes with a lot of challenges on set where you're working around, expectations of a child who's he can't read yet, he's actually 5 and maybe he doesn't remember all his lines. And so you have 2 cameras on the days that he's on set, these kind of things that we planned for. But Erika loves to take a really scary risk like that and like throw a motorcycle in the movie that I don't know how to ride yet, or like make me learn how to play guitar, just like these fun challenges. I love them. They always turn out good, but she doesn't stray away from like the rules. Water, animal, dogs, don't do, kids. Like she's like, no, we got it. I love a challenge.
That's what makes it feel real. And I think that's what elevates it, because, when you are working with those things people tell you to stay away from it, I think it stands out a little bit. I love that we have a non-actor child actor in the show. I mean, I think that's amazing, and he did a great job because he's not an actor.
Yeah, just being naturally himself.
And sometimes he would forget his lines, but we had our wonderful intern Annalise there to prompt him. She's like, she also had a small part in the film as well, and she's credited as the assistant to Mr. Hayes because our child actor was named Jaden Hayes. So that's kind of like a fun thing that we put in the end crawl. But that helped, and we were able to cut around any time that he forgot or he got tired. We were able to cut around all of that in the edit and really build a life for him in post. And I kind of knew that was the task going in, casting a non-actor and a child that we couldn't have on set for very many hours in a day. So you kind of just have to be prepared for that. It's like you'd go in and you're like, we'll probably build a little bit of this performance in the edit, and that's okay. As long as we're rolling on those authentic moments. I mean, there's a scene in the film that was the first thing we ever shot, and it's him just interacting with Mackenzie Barwick, who plays his mother in the film, and they're just interacting, and I saw it happening, and I was like, we should roll on this. And I was like, Mackenzie, because we were set up to actually shoot something, and there was no dialogue. She's just supposed to be looking off camera and reacting to the sound of a car starting, and I was like, just go ahead and like react a few times in a series. And while he's just on the swing set talking to you, thinking we're not recording him, and it's so wonderful because he's just like gabbing, and like everything he says is getting recorded, and people always laugh at what he says. He's like, I can do something cooler than that, you want to see? And it's like people always laugh at it in the edit, and it's like a perfect time for a laugh. It's like a heavy moment in the film, so a little comedic relief, but that just wasn't scripted. He just brought that, and in the edit it was like a nice moment for a bit of levity, and I'm glad the audience can feel that, because it's kind of after the heavy climactic scene of the film.
Oh, that's awesome. So it balances it out.
It was perfect. There's so many things like that happened on this film, and a lot of it is attributed to our first time green cast. So
This reminds me of a clip I saw from the Florida Project when there was like this huge rainstorm that happened, and that film, to my understanding, used some non-union child actors or like non-actors, child actors that just were the characters, and that kind of magic that happens when, you know, there was like a rainbow and they're just chatting and they're like rolling on this moment, and it ended up being this just iconic part of the film. And that comes with directors who are willing to step out of the boundaries and say, we don't have to do this so traditionally. And like when you have a feeling about something, like you just cue the crew, like let's roll. And our sound mixer Josiah just like observing, you know, pressing record, and you're thinking outside the box as a director. And I think that's a gift growing up in the indie space, that you give yourself the flexibility to kind of step outside of the line, so to speak, and color outside of like the rules, and create and hire on potential over proof, and like create outside of like the limits that there's no box that we put ourselves in because we didn't go to film school. Yeah. We weren't taught a traditional way. We're just kind of, we keep saying it, we're building the plane while we're flying, but there's freedom there, you know?
How many times have we said that? Yeah. I love that term though, potential over proof. I use that.
Yeah.
Do you guys, like now, you know, Imogene's done, it's moving into distribution, and you're taking on a bigger project. Is there any concern with, now that there's bigger money involved, potentially named actors that'll help move the needle distribution wise, that some of that flexibility, that you'll have to give some of that up, or that the dynamic will change a little bit? How much, like, is that a concern that you guys have, or do you think about that?
It's a really good question. I think it's on our minds. We don't spend a lot of time talking about it yet because we're not at that moment where it's like real. And I'm sure I've thought about it myself. I don't think we've had this conversation, so I'm curious to hear what you're about to say.
Oh, well, when you're budgeting, you're thinking, what kind of trailer will this person want? I remember walking through the budget with one of our producers, Sarah Elizabeth, and thinking about, well, you know, this trailer with like, that's a trailer with multiple rooms would be like fine for like, you know, our cast that's just here, you know, our Southeastern cast, but we'll probably need this type of a trailer for this person to when they work these weeks for our like name supporting actress, or our minor, you know, name male actor role who's going to probably come in and out in about, you know, 2 or 3 days of shooting. He'll just be on with us for, you know, no more than a week. So when he's on set, maybe there will just be a few more bells and whistles that we add, you know, and then we'll take it away. It'll kind of be this like fluctuating environment to accommodate what those people need. But honestly, we've also been looking at name cast and seeing what they're like on social media, and like reading reviews about what they're into, if they have their own production companies or they're invested in female filmmakers, and, you know, trying to do our due diligence with the types of names we would bring on, not just kind of, you know, throwing paint at the wall and saying that person seems good, but when we find someone who seems right for the role, doing a little bit of sleuthing if we can to kind of figure out how many indies did they work on before they had their big break? Are they still working on indies even though they've done a Marvel film? And trying to really put together our target A-list of talent with that in mind, knowing of how we like to run sets. There has been a little bit of, I guess, premeditation on that.
Kind of like vetting. I guess that reminds me of like a couple conversations we've had. And as you grow as a filmmaker, your network gets bigger and bigger, and the world just feels smaller and smaller. So some of the people who are on our list of names, you know, we have producers that have worked with them, and they're like, oh, they're great. They work Schedule F, or they don't require this, or they just had the same honey wagon as everybody else, you know, or stunt coordinators that have like doubled for this person, or like so humble, give you his number, like direct line, that kind of thing. So vetting them through your network, that's been something I think we've been subconsciously doing. The conversation we've had is thinking about who this supporting female lead is going to be, and is she going to fit the vibe? Because she's going to be with us like almost run of show. So how invested is she in the vibe that we're putting out there, and not trying to retroactively like fit someone in that has like a Hollywood energy to something in rural Eastern North Carolina. We want them to think it's cool and to get on board and not to feel like this is a chore for them, or that, I don't know. It's complex and there's a lot of layers because people's agents and managers have opinions and everybody's got a contract and there's a lot of red tape to cut through. But at the heart of it, you know, they're just some actors that are supportive of like working with non-established creatives and trying to help you break out and like open the gate for you and say, come on in with me. It was hard for me to get where I'm going, so I want to help you. And because we do that for other people, I feel confident we're going to find the right people that also feel that way to us. So this whole lifting while climbing energy is just going to continue to build. And because we're even having this conversation, we're probably putting the particles out there in the universe to attract the right people to us, you know?
Exactly. We have this saying that we're actually going to paint it above the window, but it's no brilliant assholes. Because
I love that.
I mean, we feel very strongly like whatever vibe you have, like it's super important to preserve that to the best of your ability. I mean, you know, things are going to happen, whatever, but for the most part, where you can control it, like that's going to make the determination, especially in a creative space where you're trying to connect to something, you know, having some judgy energy over here is going to screw that up. And so I think it's really good that y'all are thinking about that. And I don't know, maybe that comes from experience, or maybe it's just natural, the way you guys think creatively. But,
Yeah, I think that just wanting to make sure we don't get to a place where the work suffers because people are, you know, there's one ego dictating the top-down energy of the set, and knowing that we were like, it's more important that the work is done well, you know, as far as the making of the film. So those types of bigger personalities or bigger egos or bigger names that come on have to fit in there, so that it doesn't create a stressful environment. Because we've definitely worked on projects where you have people with large egos coming in and have like witnessed that either as actors or producers or other crew members. You feel that when someone comes on set and they feel like they're kind of like the big wig in the room and they can just say whatever they want. I remember being doing stand-in work on a studio show in Wilmington, and the kind of name actor they had brought in was just like bulldozing the whole set, and you could feel the energy of the crew tighten whenever he walked on, and he just kind of was like trying to just like run the show in this way because he obviously felt like maybe he was too important to be there or whatever, and you could just feel everyone was
That
like wondering
sucks.
what he's gonna do next, and be like, action, you know. And I was like, ooh, I never want to work with someone like that, or definitely never want to be that person. So kind of trying to watch out for that when you have like a nice crew. Here we are working together, making this film, and then you throw in this kind of, you know, bad apple into the mix.
I guess it's just exactly echoing you in the opposite way of you asking how we choose first-time department heads. It's like, how do you choose seasoned veteran actors? It's probably going to be a vibe check at the end of all of it, you know? It's like, you're going to meet these people, you're going to have some chemistry reads and things like that, and we'll have to follow our gut and like have some kind of discernment. I think this is like a good reminder, because too much is at stake, right? It's like your second baby, and we've worked already 2.5 years in getting it off the ground, and we're not greenlit yet, you know? So it's like a lot of our sweat equity and like our time and like limited time on this earth that we put into making this film happen. So it's important to bring the right people to the table.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that, you know, once it's in the can, like you can't go back and make it. So that actually leads to a question I wanted to make sure I asked you guys. Thinking creatively, like your creative voice, what would you say over your years of doing this, what part of your creative voice have you had to fight the hardest to protect? Or if you've even gotten to that point yet, or maybe you anticipate that this could become a point of tension as you're getting further and deeper into, you know, the industry, so to speak.
That's a great question.
That is a great question.
I look to Erika because the dynamic of Honeyhead, she really is like the IP person, and like all these genesis for these movies and these ideas for stories, they just kind of are birthed through her. She's like the idea mama, and I'm like the how do we get out in the world and practically make it happen once I like latch on to her ideas. So from like a creative genesis moment, like what do you think about?
I think that as you move from indie scale to maybe larger studio scale, there's just going to be more people who feel like they have a stake in the creative idea. So it's interesting you bring that up, because I have been mentally preparing for that as we seek out collaborators for even this next project, being aware that everyone's gonna want to have their say a little bit, maybe in what they think could be better about the script. And I think it's important to remember that you have to make sure you don't end up with a weird Frankenstein version of the project at the end of the day. I mean, we've been sending the script through different coverage kind of programs for the past probably year and a half. And whenever you get some people are really aggressive with their feedback and they have all these ideas, and some people love it, but maybe would change these couple of things, and you have to have discernment there. So I think that's been preparing me for having these readers that are producers or development executives or, agents. It's nice to have the opportunity to receive coverage from those folks, because it gives you some mental and emotional prep for what it might be like to actually sit in a room with someone who's come on to the project. Maybe not this one, but maybe the one down the line when a bigger production company or studio gets involved, and know that you have to make sure that you're shepherding the project appropriately and not turning it into something you don't recognize because you're taking everybody's feedback. I think feedback is important to the creative process, and it's going to help you see maybe where you have blind spots about structure or plot or character arcs and things like that. From writing to filming all the way into post, that sentiment applies to all different parts of production. But I think just as you grow and the budgets get bigger and more people have stake in the project,
there's more pressure.
There's just more pressure, and there's just more of a need to create diplomatic compromise, I guess, when you're talking about what's best for the project versus how do we please all these people that want to have their 2 cents, I guess, about the creative. Does that answer your question?
It makes sense, and I think it's aligned with the basic sentiment that it really comes down to preserving the core of what you set out to do.
Yeah, I think you have to have a guiding North Star about what is it that I'm trying to do, or what is the story, what is like the seed of the story I want to tell, and making sure that stays true. And we've had the opportunity to collaborate on projects, or been pitched scripts that didn't feel right for our brand, or didn't feel right for various reasons, that have had money attached to them, and we've turned them down. So I think that you have to just start from a place of saying, maybe if there's too many people with a lot of feedback on maybe this script, maybe this is a more appropriate script for this collaboration. So I think also having options for people could be a solution for that, but it's definitely something I'm anticipating having to collaborate for sure as we grow.
And I think in the grand scheme of things, we're still at the beginning, right? Like Erika is truly an auteur when it comes to a film. The writer, director, the voice, the vision, and even down to like framing and aesthetic and composition, all of that is like, it's in her. And so protecting that is kind of like the bodyguard. I'm like, protecting that vision, it's important, because as a young woman who looks younger than she really is too, she's not Quentin Tarantino, right? She's not like yet Greta Gerwig, so she doesn't command that kind of respect to strangers, maybe these studio executives or people who would have feedback. It's not like Erika has proven to them yet that her vision should be honored, and so there's like a fine line of like who you're going to invite into the creative process, because you do need to like hold your ground until you have a chance to prove that you can birth a project, and Imogene is an example of that, but it's so different than host country that it's almost like starting from square one again, because people will say, well, she's never directed action. Let's get Catherine Bigelow on. Let's bring on someone who's like proven that they can do that. And gosh darn it, like, why don't we just give somebody a shot? You know, it's like that kind of conversation I feel like we have over and over again. And like, when will that end as young women? I'm not really sure. Eventually it will. Eventually you'll have done the Barbie and it's like, oh yeah, here's a blank check, make Narnia or whatever it is, you know, but we're still working towards that. It was a super good question. And I feel like we need to take these with us as a reminder of all the things we need to just emotionally like prepare and wear like our body armor as we like move into the next season. All of these questions are reminding me of like
I'll
things to anticipate, you know. I'm gonna like put it on our cork board, like, yeah, we got this.
So something else that I was curious about too, you know, and keep in mind that you guys are really entering a new phase of your development as filmmakers. Has there been a cost to filmmaking, to doing filmmaking and pursuing that maybe you didn't anticipate getting into it? And I don't mean monetarily, but like emotionally, relationally, spiritually. Is there something that you had to struggle with or get through that maybe you didn't even anticipate showing up?
What comes to mind for me is this ridiculous saying that everybody talks about, how if you do what you love in life, you never work a day in your life. And it's just the complete opposite. It's like,
I think you work harder.
yes, do what you love and you'll always kind of be working, is what I say. In your head, while you're driving, you're solving problems, you're an entrepreneur. You don't get to clock in and clock out. You know, I do create sacred time for my family when I come home and try really hard to compartmentalize. With Erika being my business partner and my best friend, it's like we have to intentionally carve time to just be friends and to not talk about work. And it's hard to do that. And so sometimes it feels like filmmaking is my life, and I'm a multifaceted person. It's what makes me a good actor. It's what makes me good at the craft, is that I've had experiences outside of making movies, but it does take so much time to be constantly pushing a boulder up and wearing so many hats. I'm like ready for the moment where we can take off a few more of those hats and just focus on the parts that we love, because as entrepreneurs in a market that's still, you know, kind of coming to terms with like our vision that we have for it, we're having to do a lot more jobs than most directors have to do, or most producers or actors have to do. Sometimes I fantasize about what it would be like to just be the actor and get the script and show up and prepare and do a good job. And I love all the parts of producing, but I would love to just read the script for character development and not be thinking about the budget. That would be amazing, but I'm not at that point yet. And the whole reason we started Honeyhead was because we weren't getting the opportunities that we felt we deserved fast enough. And so we started a company to create autonomy over that and to tell the stories we wanted to tell, to give a chance for ourselves and other people to bring them to life, specifically female-driven content and, you know, three-dimensional characters for women and opportunities for women in front of and behind the lens. But that comes with so much more work. And so it's really become very time-consuming for me. So I feel like there's a decade of my life where I think back, like, what happened? And a lot of it was Honeyhead was happening. I got married, I had a baby, you know, moved to Wilmington, things like that. But a lot of it's just been this constant, I won't call it a grind because it's been fun and there's, you know, a lot of joy, but a constant pushing of the boulder. I'll say that.
I think grind is not, you know, I understand what you mean when you say grind. And like, you don't necessarily want to use the word grind because sometimes it has a negative connotation, but sometimes it's just like slogging through. Not to say that it's the end result or where you're getting to is not rewarding, but you know, it's fun to fantasize about pursuing your dream and it being easy because it's something you always wanted to do, and then you actually get into it and you're like, oh shit, do I really want to do this? Like, is this something I'm really committed to? But then there's just something inside you that won't let you stop.
Yeah.
And maybe it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the universe expressing itself through, you know, maybe that's your purpose here, at least for this moment
That's
in time.
a really good point. It's like, I feel like I constantly just have stories that come to me. I'm like, I have to write that, or I like can't wait to make the next movie. It's like we haven't even made Host Country yet, and I'm like, and then I can't wait to make this one, and then, you know, and I think that the word grind, I think, also implies, when I visualize it, you're wearing something down, and you have to make sure you replenish it. I think when you own a business, there's a lot of, I struggle sometimes with productivity guilt, where I'm like, well, I should be doing something, you know? It's like, and you put yourself into this box of like guilt for taking time off of working when you could be doing something else with your time. But that's how you create burnout. And so being able to turn off and replenish, and like whatever that thing is that throughout the week you're wearing down, whether it's your spirit or your physical health or your emotional well-being, you have to find time to build it back up, so that as you're working and you're kind of sanding away at your energy and all of that, you're finding ways to put it back. So when you were saying grind, I was like, that's actually an interesting word when you think about what it actually means to grind something.
Maybe we change the narrative then. Instead of grinding, we're polishing.
Polishing is good. I think about what you just said about the replenishing, and it reminds me that we always try to take a pause when there's something to celebrate. Y'all ever get too busy that you don't realize you're where you wanted to be 5 years ago, and that you're like living the dream already?
Yes.
We intentionally, I make us like stop and pat ourselves literally on the back, or each other, or just go out and like have a moment away from the office where we can just celebrate where we are, because this is a milestone, and it's not like a traditional career where you go get a degree and you walk across the stage and people come and they celebrate you. It's like we don't get those milestones as self-taught indie filmmakers, so you have to create them for yourself, and you have to pause and recognize you've gotten to a milestone, celebrate it, and invite that like positive energies so that you can continue polishing. Because if you never slow down, you're gonna like wake up and be 70 and still be working towards something and not be able to reflect on all the things that have happened, you know, and all the places you've gone. For Honeyhead, what fills my cup is looking at all the other people that our brand has touched and influenced, not just from like a consumer perspective, but from the collaborators and our community, and how we have created magic for other people just by being creative people and grinding and polishing the brand. But it's like open doors for people. They have other opportunities because of all the synchronicities and like the connections we've made. I mean, things y'all have done have opened doors for us without you even realizing it. It's like,
True.
I see
really
that,
cool
and
to
I
hear,
love
actually.
to reflect and recognize on all that, because it fills my cup and makes me remember that it is for a bigger purpose. It's not just like the everyday kind of slogging. It's definitely like we're all connected in this web.
I don't want my squeaky water bottle to interrupt you. What were you saying? I was like, you're like saying this nice thing, and somewhere in the background of the audio is like,
It's like one of those silly noises that wakes kids up when they're sleeping.
We don't want any of those in my house.
That's my bottle of.
yeah.
I think I have that with mine too.
That's fun Foley though.
Yeah.
That's a good sound.
That's actually what we designed this room for. Was initially it was Foley, because you know this isn't a sound stage, so especially when it's raining really hard outside, dialogue out in the main area is really difficult. So this is actually the most expensive room in the place, because it's completely decoupled. It's a room within a room, and the ceiling is suspended. But, But anyway, it's encouraging to hear you guys talk about how you deal with burnout, because that's a real thing, and there is that pressure to, I feel guilty taking a break, or sitting here for the last hour just scrolling on my phone or playing some mindless game, and doing that while feeling guilty, so you never really truly get a rest, because you're just beating yourself up the whole time that you're not. And I think it's an important part of sustainability. I think, especially in a field that demands a lot of you, mentally and creatively, and there's two sides to this. Like, you guys are busy doing the film, but you're also running a business, and getting caught up in the weeds of the business, I feel like sometimes can take away from the ability to be creative. It's like two separate energies.
Oh, very much so. I can't imagine when we've had like a business heavy week or something, I'm like, maybe I could write this weekend or do something. It's like, no. There's like all of that energy is gone. There's like, I find they don't really coalesce very well together. The like thinking about our taxes and our insurance and like the LLC of it all and like the creative flow state, they don't like each other at all. Yeah. So it's really hard to like, I'm not someone who can go operate a business and then go and be like, and now I'm going to spend 2 hours working on the screenplay. It's like, I can't do that. Creative. Do you know what I mean? It's like they don't really like each other. If anyone out there finds that has a methodology for how to get them to play in the same sandbox, I would love to hear.
I was about to say, if anyone listening out there wants to come do our insurance and taxes and, be that hat, come on, I'm ready to take it off. I mean, we have a CPA and a broker and things, but you're still you're the business owner. You're the one they're like reporting to, and you have to understand all of it. It's like not fun. I'm ready for someone who loves that. That's like the thing they love. Come on and find
That's
Honeyhead.
their creative passion.
Yep.
Yeah, we are also looking for that person.
Aren't we all?
Do they even exist? I don't know. Let me see. Just a couple questions, and then
this has been a really nice conversation. Yeah.
I'll be honest, and maybe this is a good time to plug Raw Unfiltered Honey.
Oh yeah.
So I'm actually 6-7 episodes into that.
Are you in season 1?
Season 1, yeah.
Oh, you're way back in the day with us. I don't even know. I'm sorry. It's probably pretty funny.
I saw that season 2 came out, and I started listening to that, and I was like, well, wait a minute. Let me start from the beginning so I can follow this journey, as cool. You guys are going through it. And I have to say, especially for folks listening, if you ever wanted to listen to a master class on what it takes to make a feature film, you need to check out the Honeyheads Raw Unfiltered Honey podcast, because you guys kind of walk through just about every step of what you went through making this feature, and are continuing to do it with season 2. And I think it's amazing. But I specifically did not want to ask things that I've heard you cover on there and other multiple places. So is there a question that people don't ask you that you wish they would ask you about? And maybe I'm putting you on the spot, but that's take your time.
I feel like because we have all the hats, we were bringing it back to wearing all the hats. I think that it's nice to just talk about the creative things that we do, because so much of what we do is also wrapped up in being producers. And like, when was the last time you just got to talk about acting and what it was like performing in Imogene? Like, I don't remember the last time I heard Kristi talk about her creative process as an actor, like solely not within the context of being a producer as well. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's like sometimes being able to get granular, it's like really fun to talk about just being a writer or just being a director, and what is that like, and what's it like just working with actors. And I'm like, we don't get to talk about that very much because so many people are excited to talk to us as producers or business owners in this way. And I love talking about that because I do feel a lot of pride that we've turned our collective creative passions into a business and figured out a way to do that. And I'm like, man, maybe you want to talk about being an actor.
Even hearing you say that, my chest clenched up, because I was like, I have to dig deep and remember and like peel back all the production things that I remember, because that kind of like is at the forefront, because it's been so much more producing than acting. Even though I lead the film, I'm in almost every scene of the movie. I was doing both of those things in tandem.
That's tough.
And I never stopped producing the film. I'm still producing the film. I produced it for 3 years before we had 21 days on set. That was when I got to be an actor. So even hearing you say that, I was like, what am I going to say? I got to think. I got to like take a minute and like have an actor moment and like think about what it felt like to just be an actor. I got kind of teary hearing you talk about that. It's so true. I can hardly even remember because there's so much work that goes into making the movie happen. But that's where the magic was slipping into this character and knowing how important it was to me, as it was such a cathartic experience. I don't know, I'm sure you know because you probably have heard us say it 100 times, but this movie is so personal to both Erika and myself. And the character, unfortunately, fortunately or not, like I've been through everything she's been through in my personal life. And so we have a really special bond, me and Cheyenne. Like she feels like a person to me, you know, and coming to set every day and having quiet time before performing, it was like this kind of sacred space for me, because I was like tapped into someone that I could have been in a way. And watching the movie and seeing audiences' reactions and realizing how deeply connected other people who are either just like me or nothing like me feel to Cheyenne, it gives all of it so much purpose beyond like the slog of getting it through production, but just knowing that the story itself and the emotional moments ring so true to people that they're moving the audience and they're creating more awareness and more empathy and conversation around such important themes and issues in the movie. And it was just such an honor to be able to explore that and have the space to do it in an environment that I was able to help cultivate and, you know, create that chemistry on set and that kind of reverence around the subject matter as a producer, like making the space so that I'd be able to like feel safe and supported going there emotionally. It's such a deeply emotional film. I just wish that could be every day of my life, is that I was just acting. But we spend like 1,000 days on set for every like 20, or I'm sorry, 1,000 days in the office for every like 20 days on set. It's so it just really dominates like all of my memories. And it's interesting that you brought that up. I had to kind of like take a minute and think about it. Yeah.
And think about like why you even got into this in the first place. And
so maybe that just circles back to your question, did we lose something or give something up? It's like, that probably answers it, right? It's like the whole point was so that she could write and direct and I could act more, but we have to like do all these other things to make that happen. So yeah, we're giving up more and more or I don't know if we're giving it up because we're creating it, but it's like a weird give and take.
Yeah. And the parallels are kind of uncanny.
You keep looking back at each other. I'm sure you're like, wow, this is relatable.
Yeah. You guys, like, we're hearing ourselves echoed in your own experience, and it's really good to know that. Well, and this is something I've kind of been bringing up just in engagement and social media in various places. Is, I was in the military for like 20 plus years, and as a veteran, like, there's a lot of resources and support out there when it comes to mental health and all that. But on the film side of things, it seems like there doesn't feel like there's a natural place to go when, people that are pursuing a film aspect, regardless of what part of the industry it's in, when it comes to mental health. And it can really affect you in real ways. And I think part of that is exactly what y'all bring up, is like, you're kind of forgetting what brought you to this in the first place. And then even going back to our earlier conversation about burnout, letting yourself get distracted by all the things, and not taking the time to recenter and come back, really to your own soul and what it is you're trying to express and put out there in the universe. I don't know.
Yeah, like what's your creative spark, and like how do you make sure you keep that flame lit and you fan it often, because it can become this tiny ember, and it's like, help me. You know, it's like when I think about that, when I don't address my inner child enough, I think their inner child is also that creative spirit. That when we talk about that, I feel like sometimes people are talking about the same thing in a way. It's like that imaginative part of you, that part that must create something. And I can feel when it's dormant or it's been asleep or it's out of practice and it hasn't been exercised enough. It's like any other muscle. You can feel it when you're like, I feel like my creativity is atrophying.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel good. It's the same way when you let your body kind of like, you sit for too many hours and you're like, oh, my whole body feels sore and stiff and I need to like go do something or like move myself. I feel that way with my creative spirit too, when it doesn't get exercised enough. And or I just can't produce anything creative because I haven't given myself the space to just exist and be. And so I definitely resonate with that, you know, and I think that it's really important to make time. I think that's why the making the time is so important, is because I think it's been such a busy season for us as a company. I feel like we haven't checked in as much as we normally would. We often just say, well, what we have to remember when a big decision comes across our desk, we often say, is this serving the greater purpose? Let's come back and remember everything Kristi was saying. We started this so she could act and so I could write and direct. And what does that, is this going to serve that, or is it going to take us even further off course of that? And so we often have to come back to that and remind ourselves, you know, is this serving the greater purpose?
We do a lot of vision board making at Honeyhead.
That's great.
You know what I found in my closet? River found it, my daughter. Our vision boards from financing Imogene. There's a lot of things on that vision board that are true. I need to bring it into the office so you can see it. And it's fun to go back 3 years later and be like, what is it that we cut out of that magazine and put on this paper, and how did that manifest into the reality? And we made one for host country because we're being pulled to maybe shoot this in Europe. The incentives there are so great that we really don't want to do that. We want to make it here in this community with our people, you know, and like, we thought, what can we do? We have no control right now. We can make a vision board. And so we got our intern and we like got all these magazines out, and we're just collaging while we're like having a flow state, you know, and like getting creative and manifesting and saying all this stuff out loud to each other and believing it. We put it on a wall in the office and we think about it subconsciously every day when we walk past it. And I bet we'll put that away. I'll put it in my closet and we'll pull it out in 3 years and be like, look at that house. That is the house we filmed at, you know, or like just something weird like that. Like that kind of thing is my favorite. It's like you don't realize how powerful you really are when you take time to just sink in, you know, to like the flow state like you were talking about.
Absolutely, man. I mean, that shit is real. And it's almost like magic, because there's been several times where we've put together like a goal list or sort of like a vision board, what you're talking about, and then pack that away because of moving or whatever, and then like 2 moves later pull it out of a box and look at it, and it's like, holy crap, we actually accomplished like 90% of what's on. Matter of fact, this studio, it was 2 years ago. Took everybody in the house. I was like, okay, I want everybody to write down your goals for the next 5 years. And one of the things on that list for myself was own a studio. I wasn't even thinking about it at all. And I was like, well, I had no idea, you know, how that's going to happen. And I just wrote it there, went on my way doing other stuff. And then a year later, you know, ended up looking at it and I was like, holy shit, we own a studio. And I wrote this not even thinking that would even be, like, I was thinking 5 years, but, you know, how is that going to happen? I don't know. But
you don't have to have the answer.
Shit, here we are.
You just have to be available to letting the universe move through you, you know, and like meet the right people. But that comes from putting yourself out there too.
Yeah, there's definitely vulnerability involved. And there's a big fear management aspect, I feel like, that you have to get through.
Do you struggle with like imposter syndrome?
100%. Like, I think we had
universal.
that conversation a long time ago when you came up to film something, and I was asking about imposter syndrome, and I'm quite familiar with that feeling, because even what I did prior to what I'm doing now, there was a lot of imposter syndrome, and I think it's 100% self-created.
I think there's a thing with this industry when you're talking about there's not a lot of space for mental health or help or assistance in the film industry. I think imposter syndrome is a big culprit for that, because people are often trying to make it seem like they have it all together and that things are going really well for them, and so much of the kind of shiny part of the film industry is that image and making it seem like you're successful and rubbing elbows with these people or that person, and so people don't want to talk about the things we're talking about, and so people feel like, oh, no one else must be experiencing this, everyone must just be having a great time and feeling really successful, because no one wants to be brave enough to talk about it in this way. So I think just opening up the door for that conversation and being transparent will allow other people to say, oh, me too, thank goodness I'm not the only person. It does, just because I'm feeling this way doesn't mean I'm a failure. So I think that there's just not a lot of conversation around it, because people, not everyone, but I think that there can be a lot of issues with image and other people's perceptions in our industry. So just trying to strip that away and be a little bit more candid and authentic with each other, I think would go a long way to help that.
Absolutely. And I think what you guys are doing too, like you're, you've developed something that is your own entity, you control it. And so it sort of gives you the freedom and the flexibility to not really give a crap what other people think, and share your experiences for what they are. We found that with ourselves.
Inviting people along the journey. They're just that much more invested in the final product because they've been a part of every step, and you've been pretty transparent about it, and it just makes people excited and want to be involved. Like, how great is that? It's wonderful. You're just expanding your reach and continuing to just broaden your horizon and think about the media and the films and the actual like productions that you're putting out in the world, and now they have like an even more valuable like emotional buy-in from people because they've like been a part of cheering you on through the process. I think this was one of my favorite parts about Honeyhead. It's like the rawness of it all on the raw and filtered honey, it's like, what's really going on? Like, show that. People want to know.
They do, and it's hard to find. So kudos to you guys for what you're doing, and I feel like that's a natural place to step off. But any last words that you guys want to give to people out there?
I just want to thank you for having us, and thank you for all the friendship over the years. I think it's really cool to be here in person with you and celebrate how far y'all have both come and the journey that you've been on. It's awesome to know that there's so many parallels, and to know that you wrote this down on like a goal list, that you're like tapped in like that. I've always known we've had a kindred spirit connection, and it's just affirming and cool, and you're right up the road. So I just want to thank you for being part of our Honeyhead hive, and letting us be part of the TENCROW. What do you call it? Your gaggle of crows.
The nest. It's a murder.
The murder. We're part of the TENCROW murder.
You're part of the murder.
That's cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Well, awesome. It's awesome to hear you say that. So thank you. And the feeling's mutual. Appreciate you guys coming on, and check out Raw Unfiltered Honey. You can find that on Spotify and
everywhere you
get
your podcast.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, whatever is your flavor.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.